Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs Talks Music and another episode of the sequel to Success. And can you please welcome back to the channel Martin Popoff. Martin, always a huge honor and pleasure to have you on the channel.
Wicked, thanks, Daniel. It's pretty cool. I don't get to talk about Warren Zevon very often, so wicked.
Yeah. So today we're going to be looking at this album right here, Bad Luck Streak in Dancing School, which was Warren Zevon's album from 1980. It was the follow-up to this album here, Excitable Boy. Now, Excitable Boy came out January of 1978. It's Warren Zevon's only album to certify. It's certified platinum in the United States. It's gold in Canada. It got to number 9 on the Australian chart and number 8 on the US chart. And of course, it had almost, but not quite, top 20 hit with Werewolves of London, which for a lot of people is the only song they know from Warren Zevon.
Yeah.
uh, which is a real shame because, as we'll get into when we're talking about this album, this man has a great catalogue. And he took just over 2 years to follow up Excitable Boy. So we've sort of discussed when Tim and I talked about Don't Look Back by Boston, how back in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, 2 years was a long time between albums. And
Mm-hmm.
how that can sometimes be a bit of a detriment to a follow-up album and it being a success and that sort of thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to look through this album here, Bad Luck Streak in Dancing School, go through it track by track, see where it succeeds, maybe where it doesn't succeed so much, and give our sort of views on how good a sequel this is to the success that was Excitable Boy
Yeah.
as a quality album, as well as how it did commercially and that sort of thing. And then at the end we'll talk a little bit about what came after this. So can we start, Martin, with just how did you get into Warren Zevon? Like, when was it that you were really getting into him as and his music and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Maybe the mid '80s, because I grew up an angry young metalhead. It was definitely 1,000 miles away from what I was into as a kid, or even the early '80s kind of thing. Um, and I don't. This might have actually been the first album, and then I went back to the other two that I consider my favorites, which would be Warren Zevon 76, I think it is, plus Excitable Boy 78. We know there's also Wanted Dead or Alive, the outlier from way back in 1970. Very different kind of music. Kim Fowley was involved with it and was like, I eventually got that on like some weird budget label thing. But this sort of trilogy of albums, maybe the Envoy in there, are probably my favorites. Yeah, probably somewhere in the mid '80s, when my you know I was expanding my tastes, put it that way, and I ended up even getting to see him live. Hard to believe.
Oh, wow.
I It's just hard to believe for me, that he actually came to Toronto, and we saw him at a venue that's not even open anymore, way down the Danforth, on the street that we lived in. He had, one thing I didn't like about the show was that there was a Canadian band called The Odds, who were the backup band, and then they were Warren's band right
Oh,
after. So
okay.
you didn't get to see any legends with them, right? From
Hmm.
California, sort of thing. So it was just Warren with the odds kind of thing, unfortunately. But yeah, it was pretty cool to see him. That would have been probably 1989, 1990, something like that, when we first got to Toronto here. But yeah, and just loved those albums all through the years, kind of thing. But yeah, just very filmy memories of when it all happened for me with him.
Yeah. Well, I think for me it was a little earlier. I was a Jackson Brown fan, and that kind of led me into Warren Zevon because those two are, sort of well connected. Jackson Brown produced the Warren Zevon self-titled album, and he co-produced Excitable Boy. He appears on this album on a number of tracks as well. So, and of course, I was familiar with Werewolves of London. I'd heard that on the radio and that sort of thing. But it was, I think my first album was Excitable Boy, and then it was just sort of expanding the catalog later on and getting extra bits. And really, even some of the albums I've only sort of filled in more recent years. So yeah, let's get into it and just have a look at this album track by track. And it starts off with the title track, Bad Luck Streak in Dancing School. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I really like this song, and what I've realized about Warren Zevon is I love these songs that he's got the big epic conservative, maybe strings, maybe piano, maybe some guest vocals, kind of incredible heartfelt emotional ballads, right? Then he's got noisy stuff. It's a little bit like Steve Hackett for me, where I'm not crazy about his incredibly noisy stuff, Steve Hackett's, and same here as we get to a later song on here. But there's a nice balance that's struck with something like Bad Luck Streak in Dancing School. It's almost like a prog rock song, and I think what makes it work is we've got other than Russ Kunkel's on the last album, we've got Rick Marotta here, and Rick Marotta is an unconventional sort of drummer, and you get this really cool kind of spider-legged beat on this song, which I think really helps it along. Plus, you've got the melody. So what I like about this is it's a little creatively moving on from that whole what's expected from the polite avocado mafia troubadour set California type music, where it's like it's got the elements of that I like. Plus, it's got this slightly more creatively daring sort of sound from the drums, from the title, from the lyrics, sort of thing. You've got David Lindley on there. Throughout this album, you've got different people playing slide and lap steel and stuff, but this is David Lindley. And what I love about this connection is that one of the greatest concerts I ever saw was I did see David Lindley live as well.
Wow.
And it just blew me away how incredible a set he put together as a rock band on his own. So yeah, it's an absolute classic. It's got those big heroic chords to it, and like I say, kind of like Rick turns in sort of like a dirty, distorted, slightly chaotic drum sound, which is a nice foil to the beauty, the ornateness that Warren brings.
Yeah, absolutely. This is an interesting song. I feel like with the first couple of albums, Warren Zevon set himself apart from the other sort of LA people lyrically, but musically, as you say, he was very much in that sort of, Eagles, Jackson Brown kind of sound. I think he's breaking away from that with songs like this, and I rather like that. David Lindley, I'm so envious of you that you got to see him live because uh, he's one of my favorite guitar players, or just, anything with strings he could play. Violin, weird sort of Greek instruments and all that sort of thing. If it had strings, he could play it. But his lap steel playing is just, you can tell two, three notes into something that it's David Lindley playing lap steel because he has his own sound that nobody else has. And I love that sound so much. Um, and it starts off with strings, but there are strings on this album, but a lot of them are not those sort of sappy strings that you get on a lot of albums. I feel like they're a little bit more classical uh, influenced rather than that sort of Hollywood Mantovani kind of strings that you get with a lot of soft rock.
Okay.
I think lyrically, this song is really sort of direct and concise. Musically, as we've said, it rocks. It's really cool. Um, Warren's playing a lot of guitar on this album, whereas, those two preceding albums, he's mostly on piano. He does play a bit of piano on this album, but he's playing quite a bit of guitar on this album as well. And I think that sort of gives the album a bit of a more direct uh, sort of sound as well. So, yeah, I think it's a really good opening track. And yeah. So
Nice.
then we get a certain girl, which is, a cover of an old R&B song, written by Alan Toussaint under a pseudonym as Naomi Neville. Um, What do you think of this one? Is it like a cover version on the album?
Yeah, I don't want to hear Warren doing covers. He's just one of the great lyricists of all time. It just seems like a travesty that he would ever do covers. I feel that about most artists, but certainly a guy like this. But it is a really catchy song. It's got that great dialogue going with the the backing vocals. It's one of the more amusing backing vocal tracks that someone can put together. So it's definitely an appealing song on here. But it's a little boogie rock. It's a little Stones. You bring up the guitar and it's like, I look at the credits and I don't really know who's doing the guitar on a lot of these tracks, because a lot of people are credited just with guitar. Like on this one, you've got Don Felder on guitar, so I don't know exactly what is Warren. You've got Jackson Brown on guitar on various tracks, and yes, Warren as well. And then, like I say, you've got these different people playing slide or lap steel kind of thing. So it's as usual. It's a big melange of people. And what I feel that you get most distinct is Rick Marotta's drumming, and you get Warren's voice. And Warren's voice is a funny thing. Werewolves in of London is obviously kind of a novelty song, right? It's got the funny title, it's got the awoo, and it's got the shocking lyrics and all that stuff. But the other thing about Warren that's kind of interesting is his voice is a novelty voice. He's got this strange voice that just in the same way that, I don't mean full novelty, comedic novelty kind of voice, but in the same way that Bruce Springsteen's voice is a novelty voice. It's just a very weird sounding voice that not a lot of people have. And yeah. Warren's also got that. And Warren is also, there's the association with Bruce Springsteen for a reason. They both like and play similar sort of music, but I think they both have that same kind of smoky, husky kind of voice to them as well. But yeah, I think it's a good song. It's absolutely entertaining. But I just want to always hear this guy write lyrics.
Yeah. I think this song was picked as like meant to be a single, to be a follow-up to Werewolves of London and that sort of thing, to be that sort of lighthearted. Because as we get into this album, I think we find that compared with Excitable Boy, there isn't nearly as much sort of light-hearted material on this album. Even some of the humorous stuff has got a dark edge to it. And so I think this is one of the couple of songs that I would call sort of comic relief on the album. And yeah, I probably don't want to hear him doing covers either, because he, as you say, he's such a great lyricist. Funnily enough, earlier today, I was listening to the one and only album by Hindu Love Gods, which of course is the album that Warren Zevon did with the three non-Michael Stipe members of REM. And that album is all covers. It's mostly blues covers and that sort of thing. This kind of felt a bit like what he ended up doing on that Hindu Love Gods album. So,
Neat.
Entertaining enough while it's happening, but again, you want that little bit more substance of what you get with the Warren Zevon original. So yeah, I'd agree with you on most of those points.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So then we get Jungle Work, which I think is a really interesting song. What are your thoughts on Jungle Work?
Yeah, to me, it's definitely very interesting. It's a kind of there's a grand 4/4 sort of vibe to it. Kind of like a wordless chorus. I think as well. It's very tribal. It sounds a little bit like something that could have been on a Peter Gabriel album. Rick Marotta ish. It's noisy. It's snarling. This is the kind of thing where it's lacking in the melody. It's almost like goes too far for me into sort of atonalness. And I feel like you get that throughout some of the 80s and 90s albums, where I don't particularly like hard rocking Warren Zevon. The same way I don't like hard rocking, howling electric guitar Steve Hackett. I love his Spanish guitar playing in the ballads, and when he's singing, well, he's always singing. He's got that voice, but the big rock numbers from Steve Hackett, I'm not a big fan of, and I kind of feel the same way here. just it's just it gives credibility to the album. And and I suppose, come to think of it, he kind of links the darker musical sounds and chord sequences to when he's being a little political as well. And
Yeah.
and I think that might even be a trend if I checked it out on later albums as we move on, right? So yeah, it's just a little too shockingly noisy for me.
Oh, fair enough. Um, Lyrically, it's kind of about mercenaries again, so it gives me a bit of a Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner vibe, but without the jokiness of Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner. This song's a lot more serious about the topic of mercenaries, fighting all these dirty little wars and all that sort of thing, which I think is really cool. Um, you don't really have a chorus on this song. Like it does have like a bit that goes between the verses, but it's instrumental. There's no lyrics to what would otherwise be a chorus. And I find that an interesting sort of thing, sort of building into what you were saying about that sort of Peter Gabriel-y kind of thing, because that's the sort of thing he would do from time to time as well. Um, but yeah. Um, and just again, as you say, it's quite noisy, it's quite rock and roll. And I find that as we go through the album too, that's a bit of a recurring feature of this album too, is that I feel like this album just has a little bit more grunt to it, if that's the right word, than say Excitable Boy did. I think Excitable Boy was a little lighter musically than this album is. Interestingly, this is a little bit longer, this album, because Excitable Boy's a really short album. It's only like 31 minutes long.
Hmm.
This is just a little bit longer. It's 35, 36 minutes long, um but I do feel like musically it's a little darker and a little heavy, not heavy as in heavy metal, but just like more gritty musically than Excitable Boy is.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. It's just seems a little more creatively adventurous, and that's what I kind of appreciated about it in total.
Yeah. But then we get a complete sort of 180 from that grittiness musically anyway with the song Empty Handed Heart, which is, one of his ballads.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so this is what he's been doing greatly on the last couple of albums, and it's an incredible song. I will push back on what you said before about the strings. You're right. We do get classical strings all over the place, but here we do get soppy strings.
Mm,
This is one where you do get typical soppy kind of strings on it. But again, Rick Marada's there, and you can hear his personality. I think the high point of the entire album is in this song when you've got Linda Ronstadt coming in with those angular searing. They call it a descant kind of thing, but it's almost like vocals in the round later on that you don't expect. So this is one of the cool things about Warren Zevon is throughout these ballads that he does, even if he's going to be conservative about it, he's going to include surprises in them that you're not going to get from a boring old Eagles or even Jackson Brown, really, for that matter. I mean, these other guys that do this kind of thing, JD Souther or whatever you want to call it, Poco, all they're much more conservative than Warren Zevon is, because Warren Zevon, you can kind of feel like he's been through a lot, and he's going to tell you about it. He's going to be honest. The clock is running. He doesn't know how long he's got to live, kind of thing. This becomes literal later on in his life. But yeah, that part when Linda Ronstadt is added into the mix is just incredible. So yeah, this is one of his incredibly like Muhammad's Radio kind of songs.
yeah, I think it was great to include Linda Ronstadt on this, not just because that sort of counterpoint vocal works so well musically, but also, she was a champion of Warren Zevon's songs. She was, recording things like Muhammad's Radio and Hasten Back the Wind and things like that on her own albums and getting him exposure, but also getting him some songwriting royalties that he could really, really use to sort of keep his own career going. Um, it's one of his heartbreaking relationship songs. It's the first song on the album that he's playing piano on. which I think is interesting because we're 4 songs in already. Um, I really like it when Warren Zevon gets tender with his lyrics too, because he's never maudlin with them. You know, there's always an edge to his relationship songs. And I love that about him. He's, you know, you say the strings were a little bit sappy, but his lyrics certainly are not. And I love that about this song. I think this song's one of the best songs on the album. I really, really love it.
Yeah.
So we get the little interlude number 1 here, and there's like interlude number 2 on side 2. We won't talk a lot about those because they're really only sort of 20-second little string pieces. But as I say, you know, that was what I was really alluding to about, you know, kind of classical strings that he was bringing into this album. It shows an ambition, I think, that, you know, the earlier albums musically may not have had so much. What do you think?
Yeah, I love it. I think they're great on here. You know, it's 26 seconds for this one and a minute 8 for the second one. I think they sound great in here. They're just like little intros to songs. You know, it gives them 12 tracks on the album, which is pretty bizarre. And like you say, even this one isn't very long, this album. And I'm amazed when I go back and look at these songs and see how short they are in total. Like they're just not very long songs. But I you know, I love the way you sort of framed his lyrics. And I'll just add another thing. It's like he doesn't waste any words, right? It's
Mm.
just everything is made to count. And I wonder if that goes hand in hand with the fact that that's why he's able to make these songs short, where it take another lesser writer a lot longer to make, you know, anywhere close to the same emotional impact. But I think they sound great on here. And you're right; these are really cool strings. It's not sappy typical strings at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's trying to show that he's more than just a singer-songwriter. He wanted to be a composer. You know, after his death, there was this album that was released by his estate of all these sort of like piano, classical piano kind of pieces that he'd written and played. And they're really lovely to listen to as well. But yeah, I think just showing another side of himself with these 2 little interludes, and I love them. And this one leads straight into the side 1 closer, which is Play It All Night Long.
Yeah, and I'll just add about the interludes as well. I mean, what I like about what they do for this album is I go away with the thought that this is one of the most dynamic albums that he can possibly make. Before we get into any sort of 80s production values, it's a very standard, nice, you know, anchored 70s production. But, you know, what more can you do at the low quiet end of dynamics than have like a string quartet sound and then go all the way to the other end with jungle work kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So we get a really neat swooping peaks and valleys sort of epic feel from this album by him introducing a large dynamic range. So yeah, play it all night long. And again, you talk about dynamics. Here we get like a standard bluegrass sort of song, Dixie jazz, Dixie bluegrass with the rolls and the banjo in there and stuff, and the grandma pissed his pants, you know, and sweat, piss, jizz, and blood, and all that kind of stuff, right? Like this is a very again shocking sort of lyric. He knows shocking lyrics work for him because Werewolves of London has a shocking lyric, and there are shocking, flashy lyrics all over this album as well. But yeah, you've got David Lindley back again in here, and again 2:53 long. And yet it just feels like a grand historical sort of song, and again just something completely different than anything else we've heard on the side.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, uh, this song is a savage portrait of rural life. You talk about his shocking lyrics. You know, when you think of Werewolves of London or Roland Headless Thompson Gunner or the song Excitable Boy, you know, they all have pretty shocking lyrics, but they're all kind of played for laughs. You know, this isn't played for laughs. This is played, you know, dead serious. Like he's painting this sort of really grotesque vision of sort of deep South rural life. And as you say, but he still does it with an economy of words And I love that about it. I love the music with this. Again, David Lindley's lap steel, absolutely wonderful. And it's just a terrific way to end side one. So, yeah, it's a great, great song.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier about the connection between Warren Zevon and Bruce Springsteen. Well, we get that in the most obvious sense starting side two with Jeannie Needs a Shooter because they co-wrote this song together.
Yeah, and it sounds absolutely like a Bruce Springsteen song, and I love it to death. I think it's really, really good. Um, it's again striking that nice balance, like the opening track, where it's a rocking song, but it's got really comfortable, great emotional Warren Zevon chords to it. And again, it's got that really interesting economy of drumming, the sort of visceral, spare spaces, slightly eccentric drumming on a traditional rock beat. That you get from Rick Marotta on here. It's got the nice flashy sort of title and good lyrics to it. It's just a good quality, stepping outside the box. Again, I'm not a big fan of the LA Troubadour Avocado Mafia singer songwriter set. I find most of it boring and just a little bit safe. And when there's some instrumental personality injected into the thing, along with Warren's eccentric voice and along with Warren's you know stepping out there, slightly eccentric, slightly street fearless lyrics, I think you need all that to make this environment, this set, this sort of world, snow globe world of that world be interesting. And I think you get that with this song.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of his great character studies. I mean, both Warren Zevon and Bruce Springsteen are known for, lyrics that are character studies. And this absolutely fills that. Again, it's quite economical with its lyrics, but I reckon you could turn these lyrics into a script, for a TV show or a movie or something like that. Um, the strings and the tubular bells also in this song give it that kind of cinematic quality as well, which I think
Yeah.
is really cool. And Joe Walsh plays a really good guitar solo on this. It's not a flashy guitar solo, but it serves the song really, really well. So I really like that.
Yeah,
So
these strings are almost in the middle, right? They're in the middle between
yeah,
the soppy and the imaginative with that descending. It's kind of a nice addition to it, but it is still kind of conservative, right? Sort of thing.
yeah. So then we get interlude number two, and we've kind of already covered that when we talked about interlude number one. They're both really lovely little pieces. And this one leads into a very short song. It's under 2 minutes long, called Bill Lee. And, this is a very spare song, isn't it? Because it's just Warren on piano and harmonica and Glenn Fry doing some harmonies. So, what are your thoughts on this one? Was an interesting song for me.
Yeah, I love it, and I love that it's actually a song at a minute 37. I was so shocked to see that it was a minute 37 because I've spent my whole life just thinking it was a normal song, right? And didn't really realize how short it was. What I love about it is, again, you get a completely different flavor. It's a little related to Play It All Night Long. I think it's got that historical vibe to it, but it's also, I love the I love that you get the real essence of why or when we like harmonica out of this song, because it's a real breathy push pull. It's almost like, sounds like asthmatic, or like a harmonica playing by someone who smokes a lot of cigarettes, sort of thing. So it's got that nice humanity to it. And also, I think in a minute 37, he almost like captures the history of gospel music and gospel mixed with the blues in this, because it takes a little blues twist in it as well. So he accomplishes a lot throughout this song. But yeah, and no drums, of course. So it's in that zone, so it's adding that dynamic as well. It's literally a song with no drums. But yeah, there's a lot that goes on in here, and a lot of the history of American music that goes on in here at a minute 37.
Yeah, I don't know that there's an awful lot I can add to that, other than, You know, it's about a real person, which he liked to write songs about real people. You know, this was about a baseball pitcher named Bill Lee. I don't know much about Bill Lee as a, you know, he's not a Hall of Famer or anything as far as I'm aware. But yeah, it's an interesting little sort of. I love this sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't sentiment in the lyric, and don't we all say things we shouldn't at times? You
Yeah.
know, he talks about, you know, saying things that we shouldn't, and then the
And
things
what
that
does he say? You're supposed to sit on your ass and stare at stupid things, man. That's hard to do. And so he just comes
yeah
up with lines that on this very very traditional music that stops you in your tracks and it makes you think, right?
yeah absolutely. I think it's a great song. And then it leads into probably for me the other song that's sort of comic relief on this album, which is Gorilla You're a Desperado.
Yeah, I think this one is the other one that seems to be aiming at like let's have a hit like Werewolves in London. It's a little calypso. It's a little Jimmy Buffett. Again, it's got the flashy lyrics to it. Took the keys to my BMW and all that kind of stuff in it. It's got some synthesizer, I think. And yeah, I'm not crazy about it. I've never really thought about it until this exercise in terms of like does this sound like maybe label interference or him thinking, oh, we got to have a hit on this album. It's got that flashy title to it, comedic title, Gorilla You're a Desperado. So I don't know, I'm not particularly crazy about it. I guess I never was. I That synth line annoys me. It just, that kind of slightly carsy new wave feel to it. So yeah, it's an outlier. It's a little light, and yeah, I'd say it's one of my least favorites on here.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think it stands up to, you know, a number of the other songs on this album. But even when he's doing a comedy piece like this, he still manages to make some sort of cogent points about sort of how mundane most people's lives are. Because, you know, this gorilla basically steals his life and then ends up living all the mundane things that he would have been living otherwise, which I think that's an interesting take. But yeah, Jackson Brown plays some surprisingly nice slide guitar on this song because you don't think of Jackson Brown as much of a an instrumentalist. You know, he's always sort of just strumming an acoustic guitar or playing some basic piano accompaniment when he does his own stuff. But he actually plays some sort of tasty little slide guitar bits on this, which I think is kind of cool. But yeah, it's not the best song on the album, not by any stretch. Um, and then we get another sort of complete change of music style and all that sort of thing with the song Bed of Coals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is another one I'm not crazy about. It's a little bit too country waltz for me. It's a 3/4 time sort of song. I find the music a little too traditional. The tempo's a little way too slow for me. Like I say, I mean, it's almost like I love a lot of people who write amazing ballads, but Warren Zevon's got to be top shelf for that. And this one just is a little too safe for me. With the rim shot drumming on it and stuff. I guess there's pedal steel in here by Ben Keith on it, but yeah, just it's almost like. It's almost like I love the gospel tinge of Play It All Night Long, but this sounds like a gospel song. And yeah, I just the music rubs me the wrong way on it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, it kind of catches me as a kind of country blues, as it were, which is something I think the Stones could do all right, but I don't think Warren Zevon quite pulls it off. And I wonder if this was a co-write with T-Bone Burnett, so I wonder if his influence was sort of, you know, on the music of this song to kind of push it in that direction. You know, it's one of Warren's songs about being, you know, in a great deal of pain, sort of emotional pain and that sort of thing as well. Um, and but there's one lyric in this song that always gets me when I hear it, and it's the lyric where he sings, "I'm too old to die young and too young to die now," which, A, as somebody in my 50s, I can totally identify with that. but B, unfortunately, that's exactly what happened to Warren in the end, isn't it? Because,
Yeah.
when he died, he was far too young to go. He wasn't, too young to die in the sense of being in his 20s or something, but he was
Mhm.
far too young to have left us when he did. He was like late 50s, I think, when he died. So,
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's sad. It's a sad story. The whole thing, cancer, and that the crazy story about that final album he did.
yeah,
Literally just putting
absolutely.
that together on his deathbed, kind of thing. Everybody
Yeah,
knowing he's on his way out, and yeah,
yeah, and making a documentary about it while he was doing it. So, just,
yeah.
yeah, it's incredible. And then the album closes with Wild Age, which I think is another really good character study. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I like it. Again, it's sort of a conservative rocky song, but it also has, just like Jeannie Needs a Shooter. I've always put these two together. It's got that real Springsteen vibe to it. It's got the almost pomp rock chords to it. You mentioned quite rightly, the tubular bells and the strings on Jeannie Needs a Shooter. So you get that panoramic Bruce Springsteen thing, that Phil Spector idea, that wall of sound sort of thing. And I think you feel that in this song too. When you get piano in an up tempo rocker, I think you get that generally. It's got a little Philly soul to it, I think, as well. But yeah, the verse chords are really, I really like the verses. I think the verses are more creative than the chorus on here. But yeah, it's got that. Like I say, it almost feels a little bit in that pomp rock zone. It's a little theatrical in the
Yeah.
way the chords go. It's something that punk rock is a very particular sort of short-lived small genre. But dare I bring up, there's almost like a little bit of a Styx vibe to it.
Yeah.
Just in the verse, just again in the way Styx would use piano on a loud sound, on a loud song kind of thing, right? it's got
Yeah.
it's got a little bit of that to it, but more than anything, it's got just an up tempo, straightforward Bruce Springsteen song kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, as I said, another one of his sort of character studies with this young man sort of acting out against the world, and Warren Zevon kind of musing about whether he's going to grow out of it or whether he's going to sort of wild age himself into an early grave. And I like that about it. David Lindley returns with some great guitar playing on this last song. And at the end, Warren's getting more and more frantic. The song's going, the chorus is going Wild Age. And then he's, yelling in the background, Wild Age, getting more and more frantic as the song goes. I think it's a great way to end the album with him sort of almost screaming Wild Age and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's a good closer, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And now that you bring that up and describe it more, I guess now I'm realizing what I don't like about it very much is, I suppose, I don't like songs where the chorus is just repeating the title over and over. There's a
Yeah.
lot of just saying Wild Age in this song in various ways, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's a minor point. I mean, I really do like the song. It would be kind of in middle of the pack for me on this album, which is my favorite Warren Zevon album.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, how would you compare this with Excitable Boy? Because I personally think this is a better album than Excitable Boy. It's a more substantive album,
Yeah,
apart
I
from
would go
anything
this
else.
album, then Warren Zevon, then Excitable Boy, then Envoy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. That's interesting because I love all of those albums. I think they're all great, but my absolute favorite Warren Zevon album is actually Sentimental Hygiene. I really, really
Mm.
like that album. Um, so what happened after this? I mean, this album didn't do nearly as well as Excitable Boy did. It's not certified anything. It only hit number 35 in the Australian chart and number 20 in the US, but it didn't stay on the chart for very long. A Certain Girl was the lead single, and it only got to number 57 on the Billboard Hot 100. So definitely diminishing returns for Warren Zevon with this album, which is a pity because, as Martin and I both agree, this is a better album than Excitable Boy. So
Yeah, who knows, right? I mean, I don't know this for sure, but when I see an album that on paper should have done well, and the guy's in LA, he's in there, he's got all these big stars on it, he's on Elektra, a certain girl is perfectly serviceable as a single, as is Genie Needs a Shooter, as is Gorilla, You're a Desperado. So those were the three singles. I always wonder, was he a prickly personality? Did he rub someone at the label the wrong way? Did he throw a tantrum somewhere? I don't know. I really have no idea. I'm just speculating. I don't know what Warren was like as a guy to deal with on the business end of things at all. But when I always wonder that because I am baffled. I mean, I don't understand why it just seems like all the ducks are in a row. That's what I always say. To make it in the music business, you have to have many ducks in a row, and I don't see very many ducks that aren't in a row on this
yeah,
this album. He just seems very connected, and like I say, he's right there where all the decisions are made. So I don't understand why it wasn't a big hit, and he never really had really any massive hits ever again.
no, that's exactly right. And it's an absolute shame. And if our friend Peter Kerr was here, he'd probably say it's a real head scratch. But what came after this? We had this rather wonderful live album, Stand in the Fire, which again, like you were talking about when you saw him, and like he had this no-name band behind him backing him up. On this album, like his backing band is a bunch of people I've never heard of. It's certainly not the big name people who are playing on his studio albums and all that sort of thing. Um, but it's a really, really good live album, really energetic. And if you can find it for a less than extortionate price, in 2021, this version came out, which is a 2 LP version, and it's got twice as many songs on it. So it's got 20 songs instead of 10. So it's well worth seeking out if you can get it for. Unfortunately, it goes for pretty steep prices on Discogs these days, but which is a
It's
real
funny,
shame.
Daniel. I barely remember it because as I'm thinking you're saying all this, it's like number one, I'm not a big live album guy, and number two, I think Warren Zevon is best experienced drinking alone, just you and Warren close to the speakers. To me, to include extraneous noise and to be thinking about a band and all that, because his albums also are beautiful studio constructions.
Yeah.
So this is not a guy I really care about in a live way at all. It's just an intimate sort of, it's you, Warren, his lyrics, and a couple of drinks alone kind of thing, kind
Yeah.
of an artist. So it's that intimate sort of experience I think that I get out of him the most. And then you ask what came next. I feel like there's just diminishing returns for the rest of the catalog. Either I'm losing a relationship with him, or the fact of the matter is, as you move into the 80s, you start hearing 80s sounds, all these different players. Records get a little noisier, a little more up tempo. And then I guess what I realized is what I loved is how he was part of that Laurel Canyon sort of vibe of the 70s, done better. There's a name we haven't mentioned here. When I think of that Laurel Canyon vibe done better, I think of Warren Zevon, but I also think of Steely Dan. And I also
Yeah.
think of Little Feat. They're all three of them. It's just like a smarter, more interesting version of boring old Eagles. The Eagles, I'm just not a big fan of the Eagles. And as time goes on, I just get even more fed up with them. Right. But those three
Yeah.
acts I've done, I did an audio podcast episode and I've talked about this idea, how to make the blues interesting. Right.
Yeah.
And you think of Led Zeppelin and Status Quo and Foghat and Pat Travers and later on Clutch and stuff like that. Well, Warren Zevon, Little Feat, and Steely Dan are how to make Avocado Mafia music interesting.
That's an interesting thought, isn't it? Um, yeah, I agree with the Eagles. I've got all their albums, and I can't remember the last time I pulled any of them out and listened to them. So, um, yeah, this was the next studio album, The Envoy, which I think is still a really good album. Um, you know, and as I say that, but after this, he would lose his deal with Asylum Records, and we wouldn't hear from him for another 5 years. So, and yeah, he would never be as big as he was with the Excitable Boy album ever again. And what a shame that is. And then again, as I say, I think it was 2003, we sadly lost him to mesothelioma. So
Wow, that long ago. Holy crap.
yeah.
Okay. Jeez. All right.
So there you have it. Those are our thoughts on Bad Luck Streak and Dancing School. Please, if you're a Warren Zevon fan, let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this album. Which are your favorite songs? Which ones maybe you don't care for so much? Martin, thank you so much for doing the show with me. It's always a pleasure to have you on the channel. For my viewers, I will leave links in the description for Martin's books, for the Contrarians, obviously, and for the History in 5 Songs podcast. So please do check those all out because absolutely wonderful content to be had there. Please do like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to see some of my other Sequel to Success shows, I have a playlist for those. If you want to see some of my studio albums ranked shows, I have a playlist for those. And if you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, like the Contrarians, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram, Twitter, and a bunch of other places. I also have a dedicated bicyclelegs Facebook page. Links are all in the doobly-doo. Please do give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.